Money is just a thing that exists. Some people say money is the root of all evil. Some people say money is freedom. Some people say money is the only thing that matters. Some people say money doesn't matter at all. And whatever your beliefs about money are will impact your relationship to money, how you engage with it, how you feel about going and getting it, how you feel about keeping it once you have it, and then ultimately how you feel about growing it once you've been able to hold on to it for a little while. We form these complex psychological and emotional relationships to money, and those are the things that really impact our relationship around. What up, everybody? It's Chris Roscoe with Operation Moksha, and today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, money. This is a big fucking topic, and there's a lot of information about it. Some of it is helpful and some of it is not, but really what I want to do today is help you get into a right psychological and emotional relationship with money, because ultimately that, in my experience, is where wealth really starts to come from. I was born into a relatively wealthy family, except my dad died when I was really young. So we had a decent amount of money when my dad was around. However, he died when I was 6. So from 6 on, we didn't really have any money. So I grew up not being able to ask for things. I grew up basically denying all of my desires because when dad died, all the money kind of left with him. And so me wanting things kind of stressed my mom out. And so I just learned to deny all of my desires and have this idea that money is scarce and that we don't have a lot of it. So I just learned how to do without most of the things that I wanted for most of my life. So as a result, I stayed pretty much completely broke until my 30s. I'm 36 now, and I've really only been able to live comfortably and feel like I have a sense of wealth in probably the last 2 or 3 years. So this is something that I've had to work on personally. It's taken me a long time, and I've learned a lot on my path from going to so dead fucking broke that literally just putting guacamole on your burrito means you don't get to eat the next day. And not knowing where rent's gonna come from, and not knowing where your next meal is gonna come from, and being homeless when I was younger and having to steal food from my friends' kitchens. Like, I've been dead fucking broke for the majority of my life, and it's only been recently that I've come into what I consider a sense of wealth, and so I'm gonna be sharing with you what I've learned about those things. And the most important thing that I've learned, especially because I look at the world from a psychological and integrative lens, is that money is just a thing that exists. It is your relationship to it and the ethos that you create around it that decides what kind of role it'll play in your life and what kind of results it will create in your life. So the first thing you really got to ask yourself is, what do I already believe about money? And how is that already creating the results that I have in my life? Because again, there's these 3 tiers that I talked about before. If you're watching this video, then maybe you're trying to generate wealth for possibly the first time in your life. Maybe you are good at generating wealth, but you find that you get rid of it really quickly, and so you're trying to figure out how to hold on to it. Or maybe you have all this money and it's just kind of sitting there not doing anything, and you have to learn how to multiply it, but there's something kind of scary about that concept. But first, we're going to be talking about the whole generating wealth area. And this is the part that not a lot of people take the time to think about, because it's like there's so many things that go into generating wealth, right? Because it's so much more complex than just like having a lot of money. Like, you have to believe that money is a thing that's okay to have, right? Like, so many of us, especially nowadays, like, it's become a popular belief that like billionaires are bad simply just by virtue of the fact that they have $1 billion. Like, I don't know where that idea came from. It's ridiculous and stupid to me, but there's a lot of people that think that just because you're rich, you must be bad. And let's be honest, a lot of those people are fucking broke, and I don't think that's a coincidence. If you think money is this inherently terrible, awful, bad thing, then you are doing something that you, by your own rules, consider to be immoral if you are trying to gain wealth. Even if it's just to be able to protect and provide for your family and make sure that you have food to eat and that one fucking medical issue doesn't completely fuck you for the foreseeable future. You need money, at least if you live in America, you need money for that shit. But you need money because, in my opinion, money is freedom. Money is the ability to do whatever I want. Money is the ability to make sure that none of my friends ever have projects that can't get financed again. Money is the way to make sure that none of my friends ever have to worry about rent. Money is the way to make sure that none of my friends or family members ever have to worry about where their next meal is gonna come from. Or like, oh, this guy can't come on vacation because he doesn't have enough money, blah, 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 blah. As long as I'm around, there's enough money for me and all my friends and my family members to do whatever the fuck we want, make sure that all of our projects are financed, our emergencies are taken care of, and our future and for our potential children is all fucking set. Because like, to me, that's what money is. Money is freedom. Money is the ability to do things. Money is the ability to provide for others and make sure that if shit hits the fan, that you're the one that everyone can look to and rely on. Money to me is not evil. The more money you have, the more people you can take care of, the more influence you can have over the world in positive, healthy ways. Because it's really kind of fucking dumb, right? It's like, we know the world runs on money, but then we're like, oh, so I'm not gonna have any. Like, how does that make any fucking sense? We need the good people to have all the money. Because if you're constantly saying how all the bad people have the money, well, then maybe let's counterbalance that shit and give some of the good people the money so that they can be the ones having influence. So they're the ones doing the good things. So figure out what money is to you on an unconscious level. Do you think money is an okay thing to have? First of all, that's a really important foundational question to ask. Or do you think people that have it are inherently evil just by virtue of the fact that they have it? If you think that, you should probably unpack that and deal with that, because that's not even true. There's so many good people with so much money. I know them personally that are doing so many cool things with their money. Like, there are people that I know that are fabulously wealthy that like helped get refugees out of Ukraine because they had the resources to do that. And it's just so many things like that that you can do, where when you don't have money, all you can do is watch these world events and just be like, that fucking sucks. I feel helpless and powerless. Gee, if I had a shitload of money, I could probably do something about this. So figure out what money is to you and figure out what you want money to be. In my personal opinion, money should be something that you have a positive relationship with, because it is the thing that allows you to do so many things that you simply can't do without it. Yes, you can be free without it. Yes, you can be happy with it, but you can be freer with it, and you can be happier with it because you can spread the happiness and give it to so many people. So figure out whether or not you think money is even a good thing to have, and if you had it, if you would be a good person. Because if unconsciously you're saying, if I had this thing, I'd be a bad person, well, then you'd have to want to be a bad person in order to get it, in which case you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then like, great, you've just become the villain of your own story. Like, whoop-de-doo, good for you. So instead, form a positive relationship with money where it's an okay thing to have. Now, the next question is, am I someone who believes that I deserve to have good things? I've decided that this thing is a good thing, that is good for me and my family members and the world around me and my friends and all that sort of shit. Great, now I've decided this thing's good. Cool, good for me. Now I feel good about having it. But am I the kind of person that feels good about having good things? Do I think I deserve good things? Do I believe that I deserve to have people give me good things? Do I deserve to receive good things? Do I get to charge for my services or my time or whatever it is? Am I putting someone else out? Do I think that somebody giving me money isn't theft and like blah, 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 all these sorts of things? And do I think I'm the type of person who believes that I deserve to have good things? Because first you have to externally see the thing as good, and then you have to see yourself as the person who is worthy and deserving of having the good things. And then you actually have to be willing to go out and get those good things. Because just thinking you deserve to have a good thing is fine, but then a new set of challenges show up when you actually start to take steps towards cultivating that thing and actually generating some of it. It's a very different process when you start working towards it. Different problems come up, different thoughts and emotions, and you have to dig a little bit deeper, and then you'll be able to start actually attracting money. So the main thing that I'm really trying to kind of convey here is that money is a neutral thing that exists. You already have your emotional attachments with it. The only reason anybody has an opinion about anything is because we have parts of our personalities that relate to that thing. Right? Like, there's a part of me that relates to sitting down as a pleasant thing. There's a part of me that relates to money as a thing that makes my life easier. But I used to relate to money as this bad, terrible, awful, oppressive thing that I could never have, and therefore anybody else that had it must have done some terrible thing in order to get it. Right? That used to be my emotional relationship to money. My emotional relationship to money is now this pleasant, wonderful thing that makes my life better, and therefore it's easier to come into my life, it's easier for me to talk about it, it's easier for me to ask for it, and all these sorts of things. So those are the two main points that I want to start with is, first of all, what is money to you, and do you think you are the type of person who's worthy and deserving of having that good thing? Because what I've noticed is a lot of the times, this is what happened to me when I was younger, right? Like, I grew up, I got into punk rock when I was in 6th grade. So I got into all those like far left-leaning politics and stayed with them until probably my late 20s. And so for the longest time, like, I was basically a socialist. I thought that all the rich people were terrible and evil and they should be giving all their money back and blah, 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 blah. But then I understood shadow integration. I understood the psyche in a new level, and I really understood why I thought that. And the reason that I thought that was because I thought anything that I did for me and that wasn't in service of anybody else would be selfish. And I had a negative relationship with my own selfishness, and I had a negative relationship with doing things for myself because I just thought I was a bad person. Therefore, if I believe I'm a bad person and I do things that would benefit me, then I'm doing things that would benefit a bad person. That must make me an even worse person. It's fucked up psychology, but that's how the brain works. It's a weird little hall of mirrors of nonsense. And so as a result, I saw everybody else who had been doing things for themselves and accumulating wealth. I saw them as the same way, because that's how projections work. And so I think, oh, well, if I were to do things for myself, I would be bad. Therefore, if they're doing good things for themselves, they must be doing bad things. So therefore, all people who have good things are bad. That was literally my logic. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I see this in the logic of a lot of like political arguments that go back and forth. It's a lot of just guilt. It's a lot of like, I wouldn't feel comfortable going out and creating a good life for myself. Therefore, anybody else who's done it must be bad. And they must be punished, and they must just give all their stuff away because that's the only way they can redeem themselves. But the reality of the fact is, if you put yourself first, because you're probably a people pleaser if you're this type of motherfucker. You're probably this type of person who's like, I can't stand up for myself. I can't have desires. I can't have wants. I can't have good things because if I did, other people would call me selfish, and other people would think I'm bad. So therefore, I can't have things, and I need everyone else to take care of me because I can't take care of myself. And that is essentially socialism in a goddamn nutshell. And it is not healthy. It's good to have a part of you that cares about other people. It's good to have concern for the collective. It's good to know when things are unfair. It's good to know when certain people are being exploited. It's good to know when all these things are happening. It's good to keep an eye on that and set those things straight. But that is not a replacement for taking care of yourself. Especially if you want to practice shadow integration, you have to put yourself first. You have to put your own gas mask on before you can help everyone else, because literally, if you can't get yourself into a healthy state of mind, you're never going to be able to lead anyone else there. And if you can't get yourself to a solid, healthy, sustainable foundation when it comes to your own mental health and when it comes to your own resources, then you're simply not going to be able to help anyone else. You are going to try to help them from the same underdeveloped perspective that they're in, and at the best, you're just going to keep them running in circles. And that's just not going to help anybody. So if you want to be the type of person that can help the collective, if you want to be the type of person that can do those things, then it's important to get yourself straight first. Because now that I have money, I can take care of everybody else. When you don't have money, you can't actually care for the collective. It's only the wealthy people that can even do that. So if you really do care about social issues, it makes more sense to be the type of person that has enough money to actually be able to impact them, at least in my own personal opinion. So guilt could potentially have a huge impact on this, is basically what I'm saying. Is if you don't feel comfortable going for money, maybe you don't feel comfortable doing good things for yourself. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you think putting yourself first is bad and will cause you to be abandoned or other people to judge you and tell you that you're a bad person. If that's the case, it's not fucking true. You're just a people pleaser. I have another video on that. Your relationship with guilt and your radar of what's good behavior and bad behavior is all fucked up. So you need to recalibrate your like, am I actually a bad person radar so that you can figure out what your values are and who you want to be and how you want to relate to this in a way that isn't just unconscious guilt programming. So I guess the last thing that I want to say when it comes to like generating wealth is just go through a little bit of a checklist, right? It's like, so what is wealth anyway to me? What does it look like to even be wealthy, right? Like, is that just money? What does that look like? Wealth for me is like, I want freedom to be able to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them with the people that I want to do them with in a way that I enjoy. And some of that takes money and some of it doesn't. Like I just went to a free thing on the beach with a good friend of mine and it was amazing and it didn't cost me anything. Great. But then I went and got a meal afterwards. It cost me like fucking $50 because I wanted a bunch of ridiculous shit. And so that cost me money. And so it's like there's some things that you don't need money for in order to consider wealth, and there's some things that you do. So just decide for yourself what wealth actually is, how much money you really need in order to live the lifestyle that you genuinely want to live. And then just figure out how you feel about that on an emotional level. This goes with my shadow integration programming, is create the vision and then see what comes up for you as a result of creating the vision. Figure out how much money you want to be making. Figure out what would you do if you have it? What kind of person would you be? What kind of things would you do? And then integrate whatever blocks or emotions come up as a result of that. So that's where you start when it comes to generating wealth. Okay, so next we're going to start talking about holding on to wealth, because this is something that's really kind of fucking fascinating. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but something that happens almost all the time to people who win the lottery is they will win the lottery and they'll come into millions of dollars, and then within like a couple years, they will have spent it all and they're either right back where they were before or they're worse off. And there's a reason that this happens. This is an identity issue, right? Like I've even felt this where I've suddenly come into a bunch of money and it makes me physically uncomfortable because I don't see myself as the kind of person who is worthy or deserving or capable of having that amount of money. Like I did like a big sales launch or whatever, and I had like $30,000 that just came to me in like 2 months. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I've never had this much money before. I've never received this much money before. And I felt an unconscious pull to get rid of it, to buy things that I didn't even want, that weren't going to make my life any better. They didn't make any difference to me. That didn't improve anything, but I just wanted to buy them. I just wanted to spend the money because I had it. And it was like, oh, I've never had this money. I got to spend this money. I get rid of it. Like, well, what do I do? And it's bizarre because like it makes logical sense that if you just came into a shitload of money, that you'd be like, all right, let me think logically and clearly and soundly about how I want to spend this money. How much do I invest? How much do I spend? Where would I put it? Like you'd think that you'd be strategic about it, but that's not how it is. People relate to money on an emotional level. So many of us relate to money on an emotional level, and so therefore, most of us make our decisions about money from emotional perspectives, which is why we have a hard time generating it, and it's also why we have a hard time holding on to it. Because when you identify as broke, and when you identify as somebody who's not allowed to have good things, and then suddenly you have good things, it literally calls your entire worldview into question. It calls your identity into question. You don't know what the fuck to do. Literally, this amount of money that you have in front of you goes against your worldview, and you kind of start to panic. And so in order to get yourself back to a worldview that makes sense to you, in order to start being in integrity with your vision again, or with your identity again, you actually have to get rid of that money and be like, okay, I'm broke again. Whew. Like, this is who I know myself to be. This is my comfort zone. I know how to engage with my life when I'm broke. I know what to expect. I know what to do. I know how to play the broke game. I don't know how to play the rich guy game, so I had to get rid of that shit. But now that I'm back, I know how to play the broke guy game. And this is what happens to a lot of fucking people. So if you're the type of person who has a difficult time holding on to wealth, what I want to recommend is when you have it, like let's say you get a big payday or something like that, pay attention to what happens on a psychological level. Pay attention to what happens on an emotional level, and pay attention to what happens on a behavioral level. Like pay attention to your body as well, right? Because it's like, if you're the type of person who can't hold on to wealth, maybe just pull a bunch of it out of the bank and just hold it in your hands and just see what that's like, right? Or like put all your money into one account. Maybe don't do that, but like just put all your money in one place where you can look at a lot of it at the same time and just like notice what that does to your body. Does it make you uncomfortable? Does it make you anxious? What emotions come up? What thoughts do you start thinking? What do you tell yourself about your world and your reality? Like, do you feel an unconscious need to start spending it? Like, just looking at some of your own money, like a quantity that's large enough for you to be like, ugh, will start to tell you everything you really need to know about how you're relating to money and what ideas and parts of your personality need to get integrated in order for you to be comfortable having a little bit more of it. Because just on a personal level, I did this thing where I saved up a whole bunch of money, and then I realized I didn't need to be living that much below my means anymore, and I could actually start spending some of it. But that money that was back there kind of made me uncomfortable. Like, it was just like, ugh, like I have all this money in there, and like, it's just kind of making me uncomfortable. So I had to like make peace with the fact that I actually had a security net. I had to make peace with the fact that I'm actually the kind of guy who can do that now and kind of start to relate to my money in a little bit more of a conscientious way. So now we're going to start talking about growing your wealth, which is the growth edge that I'm personally leaning into now, because like I said a little bit before, is I have the savings now. First time in my life I have a substantial savings, and it doesn't make me uncomfortable anymore. It's not this like weird thing that I'm like trying to pretend doesn't exist because I have to identify as the poor guy. In order for me to identify as the poor guy, I have to pretend that that's not there. Like, that's not there anymore. Now I'm in this place where I'm just like, okay, I have money. What do I do with it? And it's scary because now you're in a position where you could potentially lose it all over again. Like, great. You know, like I've done all the things. I've generated the wealth. I have found a way to get comfortable holding on to the wealth while I'm comfortable. Now I need to grow it. And growing it is scary because that's when you start investing. That's when you start putting your money in things that you don't necessarily fully understand yet. That's where you start taking risks. That's where you have to start learning an entirely different skill. And it's terrifying because you've put all this time and energy into developing the wealth and learning how to hold on to it. And now in order to grow it, you have to potentially risk losing it. And it's scary because, at least in my experience and the experience of a lot of people that I know, when you start getting into investing, like the stock market or Bitcoin or anything like that, like you're gonna lose a bunch in the beginning, because you just don't know how shit works, and you're figuring stuff out, and you're likely to make emotional decisions, which are not usually going to pay off for you in the long run. So this is just another element of making peace with your emotions. And there's also an identity piece that is really important with this. Because when it comes to growing your wealth, you want to make sure that you're not thinking emotionally. So you need to make sure that your relationship with loss and that your ability to generate more is really sound. Right? Like I don't really, like a friend of mine had me buy this fucking $2,000 NFT. It's the only one I ever bought, but now it's worth like $300, right? And it's like, yay, good for me. And so my relationship with that is that like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm the kind of guy who can spend $2,000 on a fucking picture that it ends up not being worth like anything compared to what I paid for it. But I'm the kind of guy who can generate so much money that that's just a funny story I get to tell. And I have this stupid picture that's I paid way more than it's worth for. And so it gets to be a funny story because I know I can just generate that money again. And that now I have this funny story to tell. Whereas before, if I lost that amount of money, I would have made it mean that I'm the biggest, dumbest, most terrible, irresponsible person who I've just proved to myself that I don't deserve good things and I'm irresponsible, blah, 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 blah. But that comes from the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset is like anytime I lose anything, it's this huge fucking deal because there's only so much. But when you switch into a more abundant mindset, you realize that you're the type of person that got yourself here in the first place. You're the person who generated all the money. You're the person who learned how to hold on to all the money. And so those are skills that you now have. You are now the type of person who can generate and hold on to money. So even if you do lose a little bit, and you obviously be cautious, like don't put like fucking your entire life savings into one like shitcoin or something stupid like that, but like spend a little bit of money that you're comfortable losing in the beginning so that you can get comfortable taking risks, you can get comfortable taking losses that aren't going to completely screw you, and so you can examine your relationship to that process. Right? Because even if it's real estate, like you don't necessarily know your shit's gonna like exactly pay off, or maybe there's all these other problems with the real estate that you bought, so you end up putting more money into it and it doesn't end up paying off as much as you thought it was. Maybe it even costs you money. A lot of these investments take a good amount of risk that you don't necessarily know you're gonna get your return on. So no matter what path you go when it comes to growing your wealth, there are gonna be risks involved, at least as far as the ones I know. I'm not an expert. You might know more about this than I do. But most of the ones that I found do require a little bit of risk, which means that you both have to relate to yourself as someone who is okay losing a little bit of things, or a little bit because you're okay and you trust yourself to regain. And also you trust that there is enough out there that more will come. And when you lose a little bit, you don't freak out and have this like existential meltdown because you think that like all the resources that you've ever been able to get are now gone and you never get them back again. But that is important because I also want to go into this whole abundance mindset in general. Those are the three main points that I wanted to talk about: generating wealth, holding on to wealth, and growing wealth, and all the psychology that goes into them. But it's also, I wanted to touch on this abundance mindset thing because this is a very common thing when it comes to like spiritual practices and just that whole world. And there's a lot of not great advice about it, right? Because a lot of these things don't take the shadow into consideration. And so therefore there's a lot of bypassing. And if you're bypassing in this particular realm, you're putting yourself in danger. Because if there's a part of you that's like, hey, yo, this is a bad idea, or like, hey, we can't actually afford this, or like, yo, this is not a good thing to do. And you're like, oh no, don't worry about that. I live in a universe of abundance. I can do whatever I want. But then like the truth of the matter is you actually believe that in your shadow, like your genuine beliefs are that resources are finite and that they're hard to get and that you don't deserve them. That's a not good kind of delusion to get in. Because if 51% of you or 60% of you genuinely believes that the universe is abundant and that you're capable of attracting all these things and you're capable of identifying opportunities and you're capable of acting on those opportunities and you're capable of turning a profit on those opportunities and then keeping the money and helping it grow, like if you genuinely believe that you're that type of person and you have shown yourself to be that type of person, then yeah, you can be a little bit more liberal, you can be a little bit more free with your money and trust yourself and take risks and things that, you know, another version of you may not have done. Whereas if you're trying to pretend that you're that person, but the reality is that 60% of you actually believes that you are broke and you're always gonna be broke, or maybe believes that you're a loser who's incapable of generating good things, like you wanna be honest about what does most of me believe? Because that's where this whole secret law of attraction thing is like they got it wrong and right at the same time. What they say in The Secret is that like the most dominant belief is the one that will win. And that's true. Like whatever 51% of you believes, if probability is on that side, that's what'll end up happening. But what the secret or law of attraction stuff often leaves out is that your shadow is stronger than your conscious mind. So your conscious mind could be saying, I'm wealthy, the universe is abundant, I have all these opportunities, free shit comes to me all the time, blah, blah. You could be doing your affirmations, but if only 10% of you believes that, whereas 90% of you believes that things are hard to come by and you're not the motherfucker to get them and all these sorts of things, then what's really happening is you're actually feeding this. You're actually feeding the 90% of you that believes the bad things, and you're creating a conflict with it. And it's telling you, it's like, hey, no, we suck. We can't have that. We can't do that. That's not true. That's not right. And if you're ignoring that instead of looking at it and figuring out where this part of you is coming from and why it's saying all these things, and you're just bypassing it, then you're digging yourself in a hole. You're spending money that you don't have while you don't believe yourself to be the type of person who can get it back. And so you're just spending and spending and spending while ignoring all the parts of you that are telling you that that's a horrible idea, and you can dig yourself into a fucking hole and put yourself in jeopardy, put yourself in danger. Whereas what I recommend doing is a balanced approach, which, like, no surprise. Where for me, I like to be aware of how much of me believes I genuinely can create the wealth, right? Because one of the beliefs is that, like, you have to live as if this thing is true. And from a shadow integration perspective, that's true. You behave, you form the identity of what a wealthy person is, and then you live as best you can as if you are that person. Now, a mistake that a lot of people do is going all in rather than gradually becoming that person, right? So they'll be like, oh, you know, I'm wealthy, so I'm gonna buy this fucking Prada purse or whatever, even though I don't know how I'm gonna pay rent next month, and then it causes a problem. Whereas what you really wanna do is, instead of buying the really expensive thing, just push your edge a little bit. You know, like, don't push yourself so far that you trigger an existential crisis and make this part of you freak the fuck out and give yourself more work to do. Instead, just be like, okay, most of me believes I don't deserve good things. Most of me believes that, like, I can't have wealth. Great, sure, whatever. That was me for a really long time. So as a result, maybe let me stretch myself just a little bit. You know, instead of going out for a 5-star meal, maybe I'll just get guacamole on my burrito. Maybe I'll get chips on the side. Maybe I'll go see a movie this week. It's just like an extra 10 to 20 bucks. Can start to introduce the idea that you have a little bit more money than you've been saying up until that point. It's like, oh, maybe I have just a little bit more. And this is where you want to use your capacity as your guide. This is what I teach in my shadow integration course as well, is that, like, when I'm doing this, there's an amount of money I can spend where I'm like, yeah, I'm this guy. And sure, I have to face some uncomfortable emotions and I have to integrate some part of myself, but it's not overwhelming. All right? It doesn't cause like an issue. Whereas there's other things, because I was going to buy this like $600 Power Ranger costume for Halloween this year, but I had to spend thousands of dollars on making these YouTube videos and all kinds of other things. So I spent like $5,000 this month on all kinds of other shit. So I was like, okay, maybe a $600 Power Ranger costume isn't the best idea right now. Maybe I'll do that once I've made a little bit more money. But instead, I spent like $200 on some Naruto costumes that I'm very excited about. And so it's like, if I were to stretch this far, that would make me feel irresponsible, and that would revalidate the idea that I'm bad with money and that I don't deserve it and that I'm gonna do bad things with it. Whereas if I stretch just this much, then like, yeah, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but it doesn't make me so uncomfortable that it starts to work against me, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And this is how it is for most integrative pursuits. You wanna stretch about 30% past your comfort zone with whatever it is. Because 30% is sustainable. You don't need to repair if you've stepped 30% outside of your comfort zone. 30% outside of your comfort zone is like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but like 70% of me is where I'm comfortable. 70% of me is where I feel at home. So this 30% is like, yeah, okay, I'm uncomfortable, I'm on my edge, I'm learning, but it's not that big of a deal. Whereas if you were to flip that and stand 70% outside of your comfort zone and only 30% of you is on dry land where you feel comfortable, you're gonna fully freak the fuck out because you are outside of your identity, you are outside of your worldview, you are outside of everything that you know to be safe, and most of you feels unsafe. So it's gonna be very hard for you to sustain that over a long period of time. And what happens is if you step too far outside of your comfort zone and stay there too much, you'll get overwhelmed, and then you'll trigger kind of like a breakdown, and then you'll have to go into repair, and then that repair will take even longer, and so it'll be like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of a deal. Whereas if you just stretch 30% out of your comfort zone, then even if that ends up being a little bit too much, maybe you pull back 5%, and then you're only 25% out of your comfort zone, which is still growth. And so you can stay 20 to 35% outside of your comfort zone consistently. And what that does is that allows you to have consistent growth that builds on itself over time. So instead of taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you're taking 1 step every single day. There's no backtracking. And so what that does is it compounds on itself over time. And it's also really important because on psychological identity level is when you do the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, when you take the 1 step back, that's you being like, oh no, I fucked up again. I am a failure. I'm not made for this. This isn't something that's gonna work. And then you deal with all those thoughts and beliefs and, rally the internal troops and get yourself ready to push on again. Whereas when you stay 30% outside of your comfort zone and only spend on those things that you can do safely and that you trust yourself to make up and it's not gonna trigger an episode, when you do that, you stretch a little bit and you're like, yeah, I'm the guy that can handle that. And then you handle it. And then you're like, cool. And you stretch again. And you're like, yeah, I'm the guy who can handle that. So you compound the identity of abundance. You compound the identity of winning. You compound the identity of the motherfucker that can handle this type of shit. Whereas if you're doing the other thing, you just keep compounding the identity of like, oh, I fucked it up again. Back to square one again. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, oh, fuck, why am I stuck in this thing? Like, it's a very different worldview. It's a very different identity. It's just a very different reality. And so I recommend only stepping into your abundance mindset to the degree that you can sustain over time. Because I can't even tell you, this whole 1 step at a time thing, you grow so much quicker and it's gradual, right? It's not like this huge, oh, I'm in a completely different world next day. So it's kind of hard to keep track, but as a couple of months go by, your reality will be so different, then you'll be like, wait a minute, what the fuck happened? I used to be broke, dead broke. Now I have all these cool things and I have freedom and I have options and you'll be like, how did this happen? So it's worth it to take the time to go 1 step at a time, stay 30% outside of your comfort zone so that you can maintain that so you don't get overwhelmed and have to constantly do repairs. Like working out too much. If you just take it at a sustainable pace, you'll get bigger, stronger, faster. So the main points that I really want you to take away from this are whether it's you could be in where you're generating wealth, in which case you need to figure out what that even means to you and whether or not you're the kind of person who believes that you're worthy or capable of doing those things. Because whether you're worthy of having good things and capable of generating them, they're different beliefs that require different parts of your personality to cooperate. You need to believe that you're worthy and that you're capable of generating it. And that the thing that you're trying to generate is even a good thing that you should try and generate in the first place. And then once you have decided that this thing is a good thing that's okay to generate, and I'm worthy of generating it, and I'm capable of generating it, then you will have it. And then you have to see whether or not you're comfortable having it. And then if you're genuinely comfortable having it, then it's about, okay, where do I grow it? Okay, I know I can generate it. I trust myself to generate it. I trust myself to hold on to it once I've generated it, which means that even if I take a risk and lose some, I'll just make more. And then you truly step into your abundance mindset and then you just catch that upward spiral and ride it till the fucking day you die. So this has been my experience of generating wealth after an entire lifetime of being broke. Now I don't think about money anymore. I don't look at bills when they come. I just pay them. I don't look at the fucking thing at a restaurant. I just give the money. These are things I could not have imagined doing. And obviously I'm not super rich. I know there's other people probably even watching this video that have way more money than I do. But to go from where I was, where even you had to decide whether or not you eat or pay rent. And you're doing that as an adult, which is what I did for a very long time. To go from that to not even having to look at your bills anymore, not even having to look at the bill at a restaurant or all these sorts of things. You don't even look. To know that that's possible is fucking incredible, and I want that for everybody. So I hope this helps. And I know there's a lot more we can go into when it comes to this, but these are the foundational elements that I really wanted to make sure that I gave you access to in this video. But let me know if you want help with this. I'd be happy to coach you through it. I can make more videos. Drop me your questions. Let me know what you think. But I'm Chris Orozco. I love you, and I'll see you next time.